Hey there, gang. We are at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, Los Angeles area of California. A monumentally beautiful cemetery here. Massive, historic, a lot of famous people here. And I'm going to tell you the story today of a woman named Pearl Curran. I'm going to go back to the 1800s, and this woman was into the Ouija board. Now remember, we go back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. We've done several stories from the Foreman family to Aleister Crowley in Chicago of the spiritual movement and the excitement, and especially the rich families, and they go see the spiritualists. We talked about Houdini. We went to New York to cover his story, his grave, the debunker. This woman was the Ouija board. We've talked about the Ouija board too. The Exorcist, and how the demon entered the body. And many of us have played the Ouija board, right? When we were young. So I'm gonna walk down to her grave. Down, well, it's down yonder, down that way. We're going to have to be very careful as we walk because the slope is steep and the footing is slick. But I think we'll manage. We'll just go slow. So Pearl Lenore Pollard was her name. Of course, her born name. February 15th, 1883, she was born in Mound City, Illinois. Now the family moved to Texas when she was 8 months old, and she started school there when she was 5 until she was 6, and then they moved. She was a pretty average student, but uninterested in the teachings, and she eventually dropped out. And they say she had a nervous breakdown due to the strenuous academics. Imagine a young child having a nervous breakdown. So something strange about the whole thing. It was written that Pearl was a normal girl and was sensitive about her looks, considering herself to be ugly. She admitted to having little imagination and few ambitions, except to be successful as a singer. So her family moves to St. Louis when she's 14. She tries to go back to school, not working out. So she takes music lessons. And she's training in piano and voice, and she's aspiring to be a, well, what they call in those days a prima donna. The official term of prima donna is like the lead person of an opera. But today, the word prima donna is someone who thinks they're the lead singer of an opera, right? The star. So she goes to do that, and she's doing well. Everything's going well. Music talents are growing. And then they send her up to Kankakee, Illinois, which is south of Chicago. And then she ends up in Chicago, all the while taking these music prodigy type of lessons, right? She would go to this McKinley Music Company, go to work with all that musical talent. She would basically lick envelopes for $6 a week. So what's a woman to do in those days, right? She gets married. She marries a guy named John Howard Curran. She's 24 years old, and they go to St. Louis, and they're just a normal family. Normal American family, and I gotta really watch where I'm going here, guys. It's a little slippery. Nothing Nothing really outstanding is happening. So all of a sudden one day she goes with a friend to the neighbor's house, and the neighbor has a Ouija board. And at first she's like, oh, this is stupid. They get the Ouija board going, and the woman gets a message. You know, the Ouija board with planchette, you move it around, and spelling out words with letters and numbers. All of a sudden, she gets hooked on this Ouija board, and she says, there's a person coming to me. There's a spirit. It's a pilgrim, a woman, and her name is Patience. Patience. And everyone's stunned. They're listening to Pearl as she is transcribing on the Ouija board the message that is coming through from an energy source or ghost named Patience Worth. Yes. Why Pearl? They asked. No one knew. But Patience Worth was coming in loud and clear. And she would say, in her first words, many moons ago I lived, and again I come. Patience Worth is my name. Wait, I would speak with thee. If thou shalt live, then so shall I. I make my breath at thy hearth. Good friends, let us be merry. The time for work is past. Let the tabby drowse and blink her wisdom to the fire log. When Pearl asked her, you know, where are you from? How old are you? Through the Ouija board, the dates came through of 1649 to 1694 is when I lived. And she said she came from across the sea. Across the sea. Well, a little more digging from Pearl, and Patience said it was England. She never named the town, the village, but she did give clues that everybody kind of determined was Dorsetshire. She said that she lived with her father John and mother Anne. So Pearl now said that she had a mental picture of the place where Patience Worth lived. She said, green rolling country with gentle slopes, not farm much, with houses here and there. 2 or 3 miles up this country on this road was a small village with a few houses. And then she visualized Patience leaving for America on a huge 3-masted wood ship schooner. Pearl described Patience as about 30 years old. Her hair was mahogany, her eyes brown, large and deep. Her mouth firm and set, as though repressing strong feelings, and her hair, it had been disarranged by her cap and was big, glossy, in soft waves. And then Pearl saw Patience sitting on a horse, holding a bundle tied in sailcloth, tied with thongs and wearing a coarse cloth cape, brown-gray, with a hood like a cow, peaked. She said, her face is in the shadow, and she is small, and her feet are small, with horse-square toed shoes and gray woolen stockings. After the long voyage was over, they couldn't find a place to land, so several boats came out, and there was Patience Worth standing on the prow of the boat. She was the first one to get off and reach shore. But then she would tell Pearl, sadly, she was killed by Indians. Now what's interesting is that, of course, the critics would come out and they would challenge her There was no record of any Patience Worth coming to America, no Pilgrim. I mean, it wasn't a name you couldn't find, but... And she was talking about things in the present, being in Pearl's time. And everyone was laughing like, wait, if she lived in the 1600s or 1700s, how can she know all this modern stuff? So, you know, maybe an act. You have to make your own decision on that whole spiritual thing. Of course, there were many fakes. There's no doubt of that. But who knows? Who knows? Pearl would say, I'm like a child with a magic picture book. Once I look upon it, all I have to do is watch as its pages open before me and revel in their beauty and variety and novelty. And so on and so on. Pearl and Patience would become lifelong friends. This was her main contact. This was her main, well, some would say her main act. And there were novels now made about her, several, as well as short stories and many poems. So, Pearl's husband John dies June 1st, 1922. And right after he died, she would figure out that she was pregnant. Their first child was born 6 months later after John's death. But the sessions with Patience would continue strong. Pearl would be married 2 more times, but both marriages were short-lived. And in the summer of 1930, she'd leave St. Louis for good and come here. Live with her friend Dotsie Smith here in LA. And, as always, the most popular requests on the Ouija board were the main topics of the day. So, Pearl continued to communicate with Patience through November 25th, 1937, when she gave her final communication. It was then that she received her final Ouija board signal, and it was that Pearl was going to die. Pearl told her friend Dotsie, "Oh, Dotsie, Patience has just shown me the end of the road, and you will have to carry on as best you can." Interestingly, though, even though Pearl had not been in ill health, it is then that she developed pneumonia. And in late November 1937, she died on December 3rd. And here is her grave. Right here. Pearl Curran. And look, it says Patience Worth. How about that? Yeah. 1883, 1937. Well, I guess Pearl and Patience are reunited. Have been. You have to wonder. Rest in peace, Pearl Curran. Rest in peace.